I want to touch on something that is a little bit of an uncomfortable subject, but I think it is really important to acknowledge as a facilitator, as a teacher, as someone that holds space, whether that's in a classroom, through the other side of the screen, if it's one to one, if it's working in groups. There's always a dynamic to consider in relation to who holds the power and who in the space is given an opportunity to explore and unpack what that means for them as a learner, as a recipient of information, and hopefully as a contributor, a co-creator, and a collaborator. I really believe that learning is a process that is about a conversation that is ongoing. It's something that is fluid, that moves in real time. And if you are someone that holds knowledge or you have something to present or curriculum to teach, I like to think of it more as a conversation or an information sharing session. There might be resources and tools that you have, there might be a structure and a format to guide you, but all of that becomes irrelevant if you cannot meet the people that are in the room as people, as individuals, respond to their unique needs on the day, whether that's accessibility needs, adaptations regarding their learning style, holding a space, hopefully, that is trauma informed and creates safety so that learning can actually happen in a way that feels enjoyable and engaging. But this sense that we're using kind of like an old framework of deliver and disseminate is something that, if I connect with memories of recent learning experiences or go back into the archives and think about things in the past that I've engaged with that I've found have left me, have left a positive imprint on me, have maybe even shaped the direction in my kind of professional development as a facilitator. It's always been a learning environment and an individual that has this really unique skill of being able to invite everyone into discussion. So they're there in a way to activate and stimulate and inspire and hold space for discussion, for unpacking, maybe even debate, so that the space then becomes a kind of a melting pot of a process of how are you responding and engaging to this. And if it's not catching your attention and if it's not nourishing you, then there is the possibility in real time of making micro adjustments to be able to then try to catch that person so that they can feel part of the process. And obviously there are so many factors that go into this that make it kind of a more complex discussion than just a kind of black and white scenario. But there have been times where I've had a lesson plan. I'm thinking back to very early experiences facilitating groups, and the lesson plan was more for me to keep me in a sense of, am I on track and am I covering everything that I want to cover in order to present a range of information so that it feels enriching and that there's no kind of missing puzzle pieces. But ultimately, when you're working with groups in particular, and groups that have unique individual needs, additional support or accessibility needs, and I know the very first group I ever took, that lesson plan ended up on the floor beside me and I didn't use it. So I was then stepping into the skills and leaning into the skills of improvisation, which has actually been such a good support for me in teaching and facilitation work. But I'm mentioning all that to say that there is something unique as well about voice as a subject, and I think the awareness that it is really important to have about perceptions around power and also reality around power as well, in terms of if you have specialist knowledge in whatever avenue of voice that is, and you are sharing work that is about hopefully inviting people to learn and discover and experiment and explore and kind of come into this world maybe that they have had limited opportunities to experience, or part of the reason as a learner why they are in this space is because they maybe are experiencing a challenge, a barrier. There might have been previous experiences which related to exploration of voice or musical education that actually didn't hold a safe space for them, and therefore they're additionally vulnerable, and they're placing trust in you as a facilitator to open up a space that feels inviting, and that vulnerability can create, even on this kind of a level that wouldn't necessarily be a conscious choice of an imbalance in power or a kind of hierarchical dynamic of someone coming into that learning space and actually saying, I don't know anything about voice. I don't know, it's not my subject, it's not my specialism. And that is such a vulnerable space to be in. And part of the reason that I love this work and that I love opening up this discussion around, how are you even identifying and referring to and thinking about your voice as a kind of starting point, is because my hope in a way is that somebody can come away from a session and feel like they have tools to build better relationship and understanding of themselves and be that guide and that reference point. And then long range view is for somebody to come away feeling like they are the expert on their own voice. And that's not to say that there isn't a place for like super niche support, to work on a particular challenge or to focus on an area of development. And particularly when you then go into the kind of vocal health or the kind of clinical realm where there might be additional support required, and that ultimately requires specialists. But in my experience of being on my own vocal health journey, I had such a joy of being able to work with practitioners that had such good bedside manner and such good person-centered skills of being able to meet you as you are as an individual and listen to your challenges, hold space for you, and yes, ultimately shed light on an area that maybe you don't have that knowledge on, but then invite you into that conversation and say, it's okay, let's explore this together. And also, I think when you're working in a clinical setting, so much of your work is about simplifying language and translating that so that it's client friendly. And yeah, so I've been very fortunate to have good experiences in that capacity. But I think when it comes to a discourse or a particular